what does it take, how things have changed? What does it take to be built to win now in the National Hockey League? And are the Leafs, do they have that build?
Well, first off, I don't think it's changed. I think the Washington Capitals won last year in large part because they were the biggest team. I think size does matter. I think it did take over in the playoffs. It's all speed and skating, and like the game is in great shape to watch right now. But at crunch time, size still makes a difference. And it's no surprise to me the Washington Capitals won. No surprise to me that Winnipeg got as far as it did because they're a banging team too. So I think it's right now it's all about speed. I saw an interview with Mike Babcock yesterday, which I thought was interesting, where he said, hey, Washington still won, the biggest team. It still matters. So, yes, you got to be able to escape. At the end of the day, it's still a man's game.
Ryan Reeves is a great example in Vegas last year, and he was playing 8 minutes a night, and he was effective against that Winnipeg team that was big also.
He took Buff right out of that series.
Yeah, he did.
He took
You're right.
Big Buff right out of that series.
So how do we look at this Leafs team as far as size and muscle is concerned? Because they're not considered to be one of those teams.
Well, first off, this talk about I don't do predictions. I think it's silly when so much can happen, right? So guy gets hurt, this guy gets hurt, this guy gets hurt, this trade is made. So let's focus on paper. All this hype about the Leafs is legitimate. They are a legitimate contender. They are. They've done a really good job. I'm not sure they're big enough. I'm not sure their defense is good enough. Just not. And not saying that they're not. But if I'm betting money on at the start of the year based on the paper lineups, I'm not betting on the Leafs.
And it seems, I said this earlier in the show, there's progress by winning a round. There's 23 teams this year that won't win a playoff round. And I worry that 4 weeks of hockey, if you go, toe-to-toe with a Tampa, toe-to-toe with a Boston, I think Florida's going to be really good this year. You go toe-to-toe in that second round and you don't get out because of a bounce here, a couple overtime losses, it's hard to – people will be disappointed, but it's hard to not – look. Like you said, look at that Ducks team, how long you were banging on the door. You add a piece or two, boom, magic happens, right? Yeah,
and the math is daunting.
Mm-hmm.
There's 31 teams. You're due to win a Stanley Cup every 31 years. That's simple. That's the math. You're due to play in the conference finals every 16 years, 15 and a half, whatever the math is. It's hard. So 16 teams get in. Within a week, there's 8 teams playing, and all the rest are out. They're watching. To win a round is something in this league. To win 2 rounds is something. To win a cup is – like, look at Washington. All the success they've had, they've been an elite team for 10 years. Nothing. So I think a lot of this talk is premature, but I don't think it's not well founded. I don't think right now if you're Kyle Dubas and you go to sleep at night, you're thinking we have a shot.
Bryan Burke's our guest in studio with us on Brady and Price 814. That said, you know what the pressure are, and you know where the tension gets turned up. A team that loses 3 first rounds in a row, if that happens, it's tough on the starting goalie. It's tough on some of the star players. It's tough on the coach. No matter who the coach is, it's tough. Look at Detroit. I mean, Detroit pushed good guys out with all those mid-'90s years when they couldn't get over that hump, when they lose to the Sharks, when they lose to the Leafs in those mid-'90s. They go to the final. They were not even competitive against the Devils. It's hard, like you said, but it's hard not to make changes if that happens 3 years in a row.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that in April. I mean, that's it's a little premature to talk about what changes they'll make here if they don't win a round. But I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
And that's Toronto. So if you're talking about having a parade, I mean, I see people out on Bay Street with tape measures. seeing if the floats will fit, right?
Yes. So they're not official Leafs management, but I know where you're going. Yes.
If that's where we are in Toronto, then we got to – people are going to say, okay, but what if it doesn't happen? Then what happens? We can talk about that in April. I do think the optimism in the city is well-founded and well-based. I think they're going to have a hell of a year, and it's kind of exciting. There's a buzz here that hasn't been in the city for a while.
How much does it matter? How much does it help you here? Oh, you got to learn how to lose first. You lose, and then you're spurred on. I mean, Winnipeg last year, they look like a Stanley Cup contender this year. Does it help to have lost previously in the Leafs? Same kind of thing.
Well, I think playoff experience is vital. But Vegas went all the way to the finals without it. So as a team, I think playing in playoffs, and I apologize to any veterans who are listening because we use military analogies all the time, and it's really not fair. It's not comparable. But we talk about combat-tested teams and all that. It's once you've gone through the playoffs and you've faced that adversity and the pressure and the tension, it does help you. We went to the conference finals the year before we won. I am convinced we could not have won without that experience. So I think learning how to get through the playoffs is important. I think the deeper you go, the more the volume gets turned up. I think that's valuable. I think Winnipeg will be better for it. But there have been teams that have won without almost any prior playoff experience at all.